Okay. All right. Hi guys, welcome back to my channel and welcome to the July reading wrap-up vlog. I think I say this every month, but I cannot believe that the end of July is here. We are in August. This is wild. I don't like it. I really don't like it. But August is really exciting. I have a lot of really exciting videos and things coming up this month, and it's gonna be a really fun time for me. So I'm excited to move on. But I also have a lot of books that I want to talk to you guys about that I read in the month of July. Like I said, I have a lot of things going on in the month of August, which means that July was quite a busy month for me as I prepare for a lot of things. I am moving. I am going to like a big conference for my church. I have all these things happening and I haven't had a lot of time to read. I have 7 books that I was able to read for the month of July, which actually is quite a few books, but again, July was a big month. Also, lots of holidays happened, so I feel like I could have read more, but we have 7 books that we read. All of them were pretty much ebooks, or if I did have them in person, they're ones that I got from the library and I've already returned them, so I don't really have anything to actually physically show you. But we're gonna go ahead and talk about all the books that we read for the month of July, and I'll tell you what I thought about them and all that fun stuff. So let's go ahead and get right into it. All right, so the first book I want to talk to you guys about is Ruthless Vows by Rebecca Ross. Now, this book is a Divine Rivals sequel in that series. I think there's only 2 books that have come out so far. But the first book is quite good, and I was actually really surprised when I read it. Essentially, the series is about it's kind of a fantasy world. I mean, not quite really, but there's like gods that like live, and there's these 2 gods that used to be married, and they are now warring with each other. And so people are either picking one side of the war to stand on. They're either on this woman's side or the man's side, and they are warring with each other. However, they have not seen Enva, who is the woman god. She hasn't been around. Nobody knows who she is. And so they are just fighting. These soldiers are fighting for their freedom, essentially, and for their liberty. And there's a woman named Iris who's a reporter, and she kind of has her little work rival, Kit, and they go against each other all the time. They're always warring against each other, but she ends up going and joining the army, basically as like an army reporter, so she's able to like write things that are happening on the front, and her and Kit fall in love on the front lines because he also quits his job to go be an army reporter, and they fall in love and they get married, and that's where the first book ends. But it ends with this big huge attack happening in their town that they are living in, and he gets taken away and she gets saved. So that's kind of where the first book ends. So the second book, Ruthless Vows, is, I guess it's actually like, it's the second book in the series. I don't know if there's going to be any more books in the series because it does wrap it up very nicely. She essentially is on the hunt to try to find him again because she doesn't know where he is. She doesn't know that he was captured. He wakes up on the enemy lines and he has no memory of anything. He has no clue that he was married. He has no clue who he's fighting for or what's going on and what's right. And they have these magical typewriters that they use to write to each other. So she starts to kind of try to find him through these magical typewriters. So I know it kind of sounds a little silly, but it's such a good book. I love it. It's a very clean romance, which I really like. There's nothing super spicy or inappropriate, but you're still getting a ton of fun action with like this war that's happening and all that, you know, that stuff. And you get to kind of see them fall back in love with each other again, since it is, you know, she's just trying to rescue him when he has no memory of her. He has no clue who she is. He has no clue what's going on. And so that's like a lot of fun. I think it's a really fun kind of dichotomy between those 2. I get why people like it. Like, I really get why people like it. I think it's so good. Such a fun little, you know, series. I don't know if she'll keep writing more. I hope she will. Her name's Rebecca Ross, the writer. And those are 2 books that, like, if I can find them thrifting somewhere, I would love to find them to add them to my collection. If I have to buy them full price, maybe I'll ask for them for Christmas or something. I don't know, but I just really liked that series because it was just really good. It was fun, and I actually listened to the first book on a 1 road trip. Like, I just like, you know, kept listening to it because it was so good. And the second book I think I read in 2 days. So good. I gave this book 4 stars. So great book. Again, I thought it was wonderful and lovely, and I think that you guys would really like it too, especially if you want to maybe dip your feet into the romantic fantasy world, but you're worried about it being too much for you or you're not really sure. This is a really great way to dip your feet into it because it's still like our world. It kind of seems like it's based in like the early 1900s maybe, so maybe a little bit old school, but then there's like these gods and magic and stuff, so that's kind of like a good way to just kind of bring it all back together. Moving on, the next book that we read was actually a book that my friend Paige recommended to me, and it is called Local Woman Missing. This is one book that I got from the library, so I had to unfortunately return it because our library is actually closed right now. They're moving to a new location while the new library is being built, so right now we can't actually go to the library, so I had to turn everything back in by a certain day. Let me read to you what the synopsis from this book says, because I think it kind of helps just make it a little bit more clear about what this book's really about. People don't just disappear without a trace. Shelby Tebow is the first to go missing. Not long after, Meredith Dickey and her 6-year-old daughter Delilah vanished just blocks away from where Shelby was last seen, striking fear into their once peaceful community. Are these incidents connected? After an elusive search that yields more questions than answers, the case eventually goes cold. Now, 11 years later, Delilah shockingly returns. What? Everyone wants to know what happened to her, but no one is prepared for what they'll find. In this smart and chilling thriller, master of suspense and New York Times bestselling author Mary Kubica takes domestic secrets to a whole new level, showing that some people will stop at nothing to keep the truth buried. I mean, come on. It's a really, really good book. I love thrillers. If you have been watching my channel or my book videos for a while, you'll know that I love a good thriller. And this one, when I was given the book, I was kind of a little skeptical, but to be honest, even though my friend said it was so good, I just kind of was like, I don't know, I don't know if this is something I really want to read right now. I started reading it on the 4th of July, and I wanted to kind of read a more happy, lifting book. But once I started actually reading it, I was hooked. It was that good. There is a little bit of I wouldn't say domestic violence, I don't think, but it does kind of touch on a few themes of abuse. There's nothing though super inappropriate about it, but there is just a lot of interesting things, because there's a kidnapping, and there's you kind of see a lot of children who have been kidnapped, and you are going through that process with them. So that's really, really scary and not fun at all, and totally terrifying. And you kind of get a lot of different perspectives. I feel like every other chapter is from somebody else's perspective, and also they can kind of switch between time frames. So it goes from 11 years ago when the murder, or not the murders, but the missing people were happening, and then it goes back to the future, or present day. So it's just kind of very, very odd and very weird in that sense. So I wasn't quite sure why they kept switching it from every other perspective and every other chapter. I kind of just wished it stayed at one person's perspective for at least a couple chapters, so you feel like you really were getting somewhere with the story. But other than that, I thought it was a great book. I really did like it. I rated this 4 stars, and it has a 4.14 star rating out of 500,000 ratings on Goodreads, so it's way up there. Great book. I totally say it. And this woman also wrote The Other Misses, which I haven't read, but that's a New York Times bestselling book as well, so I have that on my TBR list now because I loved this one so much. Okay, the next book that we have, I actually did a full reading vlog on, so you guys can go and watch that. I'll make sure to link it down below, but it is Reckless by Lauren Roberts. This book is the second book in the Powerless trilogy, and I believe that there is going to be one more book coming out next April, I think is what she said on her Instagram post. There's also a novella in between the first and second book that I have not read, but I was so excited to get my hands on this book because the first book, I think I literally read in one day. It was one of my favorite books from last year. Did I read the book earlier this year? I think I actually read it earlier this year. This book I also gave 4 stars. I have a 4.15 star rating on Goodreads out of 102,000 ratings, so it's obviously very, very well loved and well liked. So if you have not read the first book, let's do a quick little rundown. Basically, there is a kingdom, again, kind of think Hunger Games vibes. It's very dystopian, and this woman is not given a special power. Everybody else has special powers that they were born with, but she does not have a special power. So she is called an ordinary, and she has to kind of fake her way into people thinking she has a special power, so that way she's not killed. And she ends up going in the first book to the purging trials, and she doesn't necessarily win them, but she doesn't lose them. She does very, very well in the purging trials, and then it gets revealed that she actually is an ordinary, does not have power, and that she needs to be killed, and she ends up killing the king, which is all happens in the first book. And also in the first book, she becomes super, super close and falls in love with the king's son and becomes best friends with the king's son's brother as well. So she's friends with both of his sons, and then she kills their dad. So in the second book, you start up 3 days after that all happened, and boy, is it just, it's wild. The whole time I felt like it was a little bit, this is what I didn't like about it. I felt like the whole time the same scenario kept happening. One of the sons is now king, and the other son is now being forced to go try to find her and bring her back to the kingdom, so that way they can most likely kill her, is what she's thinking. That's kind of what they kind of get out throughout the whole book, is that he's bringing her back so that way she will get punished and most likely die for treason and murder. And he's able to find her pretty quickly, but then she keeps escaping, and then he finds her and then she keeps escaping, and then he finds her and he keeps escaping. So that was kind of the whole premise of the book. I felt like was just, that was happening over and over and over again. So I didn't necessarily love that. I wish that there was a little bit more happening, but I still was totally entertained the whole time. And I love the little romance story that was also going along with it, because again, they were in love at the end of the first book, and then this happens. So you have to figure out what's going on and why that's happening, and you find out so many insane things from her past during this story that you don't really get in the first book as well. So it's just, I feel like it was a good ongoing book to get to the third book, if that makes sense. So we'll see what happens, because this book also, I'm not going to spoil it. You can go watch my full spoiler vlog because I have that, but it ends in a freaking crazy cliffhanger. I don't know what they're going to do. I don't know how she's going to wrap this book up, or this series up, because it was wild. Again, just totally wild. So 100% recommend this series. It's also a very clean series. You only really get kissing scenes in it, so it's very PG, very PG. So far, all of these books have been 4 stars, and honestly, the lowest rating for this month was only a 3-star rating, and I have 3 of those, so we're gonna get into those real quick now. The next book that we have is Assassin's Blade by Sarah J. Maas. Now, one of my friends, Lindsay, she was the one who finally convinced me to read the Throne of Glass series, and this is the very first novella in the series, so it's not the actual first book, but it's a novella that predates everything else, I believe. I'm not quite sure how the series goes. I actually don't know if I'm going to continue with the series, but it's essentially a novella of 5 short stories with the same woman, and she's kind of going through, she was banished, essentially, as, well, not banished, but she was sent away for a repentance period, kind of, because she let a big deal go wrong. She was an assassin for her city, and she kind of destroyed a huge deal that was happening that was not what she was supposed to do. So she was kind of sent away to a new camp, and they trained her there, and she had to come back with a letter of recommendation from the head honcho at this other assassin's camp out in like the desert somewhere. And she just goes through all these crazy series of events, different things happen, she meets different people, which I think they all culminate into, like, you'll see them all throughout the rest of the series. And I know that there's like a certain way, a lot of people say there's a certain way that you should read this series, and I don't think it starts with the first novella, is what people are kind of saying, but unfortunately, that's what I did. So I really liked it though. It was kind of short because it is, again, just a novella, and I rated this 3 stars. My main reasoning is I honestly think I'm just a little over the romantic fantasy stuff right now. I'm not sure. I just feel like maybe I just need to take a break from it for a while, which is why I wasn't just totally in love with it. And I also felt like there was a lot of violence and just a lot of things that weren't finished fully in the story, a lot of avenues that I feel like could have been explored more, which I get, there's a whole another series, like another like 8 books I think in this series to read. So that's my opinions on it. That's why I didn't necessarily love it, but I did give it a 3-star rating, and I am on the wait list to read the next book in the series, so we'll see what we think about it, but that's kind of where we're at with that book. And we'll see what the series is. I heard a lot of great things about it. I know it's a really great best-selling series, so again, we'll just wait and see. Another book that I read this month is When She Was Me by Marley Bush, and this one I also only rated 3 stars, but it was a really, really interesting and very unique story. This one also goes through 2 points of views in the chapter, and so it actually goes through 3 point of views because it goes through 2 girls who are twins. There's a girl named Cassie and a girl named Lenora, and they are twin sisters, and they live in this cabin out in like the woods of Tennessee somewhere. And then it also goes between, so it goes between those 2 point of views, but then it also goes back in time to a time named then, like it just says then, and you don't know who it is they're talking about, if it's Cassie or Lenora, but it kind of goes through their past. And the whole time when you're going through the 2 sisters' point of views, like, you know that something happened in the past, and it happened to do with their parents. Their dad died, and it kind of sounds like potentially one of the sisters accidentally or on purposely killed their father. So you don't really know what's going on, but then it keeps going to these flashbacks of then, and you're kind of getting this backstory. But what is happening at the same time is in real life at the cabin where they live, there's 2 other cabins that are near them, and this new woman kind of buys the cabins. She moves in, and she's letting the 2 girls stay, but she's renting out the 3rd cabin to that way, you know, bring in some extra money. And there's a woman who is there with her husband and her daughter named Tilly. Tilly ends up going missing and dies very quickly in the beginning of the book, which is unfortunate, very, very sad. But you also kind of have that aspect going on of like, who is the one that killed her, because there's only a couple people up there that live up there and are around there, so it had to potentially be one of them. So very, very crazy. The ending was insane. It shocked me. I had no clue. I actually was sitting in my bed back here, and I gasped out loud when I realized what was going on. And maybe I'm just naive and I just didn't know, but it was insane. It was so wild. So I definitely recommend reading this again. Another thriller slash like mystery style of book where you're just trying to figure out what's going on and who's the one that did it. And the whole time you're really suspicious of Cassie and Lenora because they kind of just have a few weird quirks about them from whatever happened in their past, and you're trying to figure out what happened in their past when you're reading from the flashback parts of the book. So very, very interesting, very unique book. And yeah, when I read that ending, I was shook, completely shook. I gave that 3 stars. I think I should maybe change it to 3.5 stars because I was really quite impressed. All right, the last fiction book that we read was actually a book by Hannah Brown, who was on The Bachelor and was also The Bachelorette a couple of years ago, which was really fun to watch. I remember watching her season and loving her personality. And she co-wrote this book, Mistakes We Never Made. She co-wrote it with like a ghostwriter, so I don't really know how much she actually wrote or if she just kind of had the idea for it and then this ghostwriter went in and wrote it all for her. But Mistakes We Never Made by Hannah Brown. And it's just your classic typical love story. Kind of enemies to lovers, but not really. Also kind of second chance love. You have your 2 main characters, Emma and Finn. They have known each other since high school. Finn accidentally abandoned her at the prom and like stood her up. And ever since then, they have run-ins every couple of years and they always get really close. Something happens. There's a cute moment between them and then something ruins it and she ends up basically running again. And it's such a sad story because the whole time she's also trying to reconcile her daddy issues because her father left her when she was really young and never really reached out and never really looked back. And so she kind of always had to be that caregiver for her family since her dad had left. And early on in the book, you find out that she is a bridesmaid in a big bridal party that she's super excited to be a part of. They have the core 4 is what they're called. And her friend Sybil is getting married. And the day, like within a few hours of them getting there and having the bridal shower starting and everything, she runs into Finn again, who is also in the bridal party, but he's not a bridesmaid, obviously. And he ends up driving Sybil home that night after they went out clubbing or whatever. They got really drunk, so he drove the bride back to the apartment that Emma and Sybil were sharing. And the next morning, Sybil flees. And the whole time they're just trying to find her. They don't know where she is. She won't answer her phone. So Finn and Emma go on this wild goose chase trying to find Sybil, all the while, you know, kind of fall back in love again. She gets feelings for him and they, you know, get really close together. And then of course she pulls away and then he ends up bringing it all back together. And as always, it's always a happy ending for this type of book. So it was really, really cute. I really liked it. I read it very, very quickly. A very easy read, kind of a fun palate cleanser, if you will, romance story. It does get a little PG-13, so just be aware of that. If you don't like that stuff, it's very easy to skip, you know, the 2 pages that is PG-13, but I would just keep your mind, you know, keep that in mind. But overall, cute book. I rated it 3 stars because, again, nothing remarkable, but very, very fun. And if Hannah Brown actually did write most of this, then I'm very impressed because it was, in my opinion, very well written for it being somebody who was a reality TV star and isn't a writer. Like, that's not what she does for her job, so very, very great. We're now on to the last 2 books of the month, and these 2 are actually non-fiction books, so I don't know if I'm going to put a star, well, I probably will put a star rating for one of them. The first book that we have is The Ruthless Elimination of Hurry by John Comer. This book I rated 4 stars, and I really like this book because it is written by a Christian author, a pastor, I believe, and he takes a Christ-centered approach into how to kind of slow down and just be present in your life again. So if you're not necessarily super Christian and you don't want to like read a lot of how your life can relate to Christianity or to the life of Jesus Christ, then maybe this book might not be for you. But I really did enjoy it, just listening and like reading of like, oh, like this is how Jesus did things when he was on this earth, or at least in the Bible, what they talk about. And then this is how we can actually apply these principles and live a life of just being more present, more slow, more chill. And it doesn't mean that you can't be busy, but it just means like, instead of like always being go, 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 like finding time, even those little moments in between activities during the day to just breathe, reconnect, be with God, you know, all that stuff. So 100% recommend. I thought it was quite good. Again, I rated it 4 stars. It is a nonfiction book, but I thought it was really great, and I would totally recommend to everybody. And the last book that we have is Fatal Conveniences by Darren O'Lean. I'm almost done with it, so I'm counting it. It's on the Kindle that I'm reading it. But I've read the other book by Darren O'Lean. I think it's called Super Life. Darren O'Lean was on a show called Down to Earth with Zac Efron. It was on Netflix, and it's where they kind of went and explored different parts of the world, different parts of the United States. I think they also went to Australia for their second season, and they just learned how to be like good creatures and creators and bearers of the earth, and how to take care of it in a nice way, and how to like find products and find things that are going to not destroy our earth and actually give back to it if they can. And that's what the Fatal Conveniences book is all about, is he takes you through all of the products in your home, or just like your food, or your, you know, even like your air conditioning and stuff like that. Like he talks about things that are very, very convenient for us that we have created over the last like 150, 200 years in like the industrial area or whatever era it is that we are in, this technology era. And he talks about the things that are good, the things that are bad, the products that we use that may be convenient for us to use but are really, really harmful for us, and have like carcinogens and have terrible chemicals and terrible products and terrible byproducts and terrible qualities about them that we don't necessarily think about and we don't necessarily see, and they don't market or tell us, but they're things that are there and they are happening. So it's very, very interesting to think about and to just read and learn, even if you don't want to necessarily take everything that he's saying and apply it, to just be a little bit more aware of what's going on and what chemicals you're using, like in your lotion, and what chemicals you're using in your shampoo or your toothpaste or whatever. Like just having that in mind, I think helps you make better conscious decisions moving forward. So I don't know, I know a lot of people don't necessarily always agree with everything he has to say, but he does a ton of research. He works with a lot of experts in all their fields, and he really does his research before he puts anything in the book. And he has a ton of sources also in his book that you can like look at and see what he is talking about, and you can also reference all of the different things that he has. He also has a podcast where he talks about different fatal conveniences all the time. So I would 100% recommend this book if you're kind of looking to maybe make a change in like your carbon footprint, or even just in the products that you're using, so that way you can be a little bit more natural, a little bit better off in like your health wise. Like it could change your health. Some of those could literally change your health. And if I can do anything to help reduce the amount of carcinogens or terrible chemicals or terrible products I'm putting in my body, I'm going to do that. So that is why I'm reading this book. Again, almost a month. I don't think I'm going to rate it because I don't think it deserves a rating. I think it's just something that you should read, so that way you're a little bit more conscious of everything that's going on. So that is that book, Fatal Conveniences by Darren Aline. 100% would recommend. I would recommend basically all the books that we read during this month. I thought they were great and fantastic, and I do wish I could have read more, but again, I was just so busy that I had no time to read. So that's where we got in this month. If you have made it to this portion of the video, thank you so much for watching. I know that this was kind of a long, just rambly me talking video, but that is just kind of what we had time for. Again, busy month, especially because I'm moving this week. So in a couple weeks, you won't see me, you don't have this background anymore. It will be different, which is exciting. Also a little sad, but I'm very, very excited to do so. And I'm so thankful for all of you guys. Also, today we hit 4,000 subscribers. I cannot believe that I have 4,000 of you watching my videos. Thank you all so much for being here. I love and appreciate all of you. And if you have not subscribed yet, go ahead and do that now, and go ahead and leave down below. Let's see, just go ahead and leave down a little book emoji, since this is the reading wrap up for July. Drop that down below and let me know what books that you guys have read in this month. Once again, thank you all so much for being here and for watching, and I will see you all in my next video very, very soon. Bye.